It's time for the Trading Stocks Made Easy podcast. Each week, Trading Stocks Made Easy demystifies stock trading and investing so you can profit big. And now, here's the host of Trading Stocks Made Easy, the wealthy investor, Tyrone Jackson.
Hey, it's Tyrone Jackson, and welcome back to another episode of Trading Stocks Made Easy. I say this at the beginning of every episode. I'm so thrilled that you are here with me and you take the time to listen to this show. And I'm telling you, when I tell you today's show is going to be hot, I mean, it's really going to be hot. So let me just calm down for a moment and tell you why I'm so excited. Most of you know, if you listen to the show on a regular basis, I teach people how to trade and invest in the stock market, obviously, and how to earn that $2,000 to $5,000 a month consistently or more if your account is over $1 million. But here's the deal. I am totally 100% self-taught. So for the last 20 years, I've studied the market through up markets and down markets, and I've found strategies that retail investors like you can use, as long as we're willing to keep it simple and easy. Well, today's guest, someone who I've really grown to, in a sense, fall in love with, has actually had the benefit of actually working on Wall Street, and his name is Jason Malone. And we have talked extensively about what it's like to be on the inside. And guess what? He's agreed to come into the studio and be a guest today and give you some true behind the scenes information of what goes on in a very special sector of Wall Street, which is called mergers and acquisitions. So do not go anywhere. We'll be right back with my man, Jason Malone, right after you take a listen to this.
Want to increase your stock market trading profits? Then you need to start your monthly membership to WITradeschool.com right now. Don't understand how to write covered calls for monthly income? No problem. Simply review Tyrone's latest stock trades in our video library as many times as you need. WITradeschool.com is all about helping you get the financial education you need to earn money in the stock market and change your financial life. Tyrone Jackson, the wealthy investor, has helped his students earn thousands of dollars per month trading stocks online from home. These are people just like you. So what are you waiting for? Follow Tyrone Jackson's red-hot stock trades and investment strategies today. Don't wait. Start your monthly membership at WITradeschool.com right now.
And welcome back. And I don't want to have any more delay here. I want to introduce the man, my friend, Jason Malone. Hey, Jason.
What's up, Tyrone? How you doing, man?
All right. Thank you so much for taking the time and coming in the studio today. You know, I really appreciate it.
I appreciate you.
Now, you know, it's so funny. There's a saying that people show up in your life for a reason, a season, or a lifetime. And when we were introduced, it was clear that it was the right place at the right time for us to meet and start a genuine friendship. And,
That's right.
And I'm so appreciative of that. I just want you to know, and I want the world to know that.
I feel the same way.
But what I'm so drawn to is not only is your life story compelling, but the experiences that you had as a vice president of mergers and acquisitions when you were working on Wall Street is, you know, for a Wall Street geek like me, is amazing. So we're going to get to how you rose to this unique height on Wall Street. But right before we get there, let's go back and find out, where did you grow up in your life and your family? So you were born where?
I was born here in Southern California.
Mm-hmm.
I grew up in Carson, California, which is about 20 miles south of LA.
Okay. And what did your parents do?
My father was in law enforcement. He started off as pretty much a street cop, and then he worked his way up where, when he retired, he was a fraud insurance investigator. And my mother, she stayed at home and took care of me and my brother and my sisters.
Now, did you have, how many siblings did you have, actually?
I have my full brother, my full sister, and I have a half sister.
Okay. Now, I want to stay with your family, but you're aware that you've had the opportunity to breathe rare air on Wall Street, and you have done some extraordinary things. I mean, when you look at it right now, do you understand that?
Yeah, I have been blessed. I acknowledge that.
Okay. All right. So let's pick it up. So now here you are, raised outside of Los Angeles, and as it turns out, you have a particular talent. And a love for the game of football. Is that right?
That's right.
Okay, so what happened?
I was a pretty athletic kid, played all the sports. I was 3-4 sport athlete growing up, and that was always the passion. Like in my head, I saw myself playing sports on TV. I wasn't sure what sport it was when I was a child. I played baseball, basketball, football, ran a little track, but my vision, as is usually most kids' vision, was to be playing on TV one day.
Okay. And you settled on the sport of football.
That's right.
Okay. And you were pretty good at it. So what happened? You go from high school. Doesn't football get you into Georgetown?
Yeah. So right before I got to Georgetown, coming out of high school, I had a full scholarship to play football at the University of New Mexico. I was there for a period of time and realized that while I was at New Mexico, you go from being a big fish in a small pond to being a fish in a small fish in a huge ocean. You realize how talented guys really are, guys from all over the country, guys from all over the world that are just as big as you are, just as fast as you are. And the game at the collegiate level transitions from being based strictly on talent to becoming highly political, and it's a business at that point. And so how you navigate with your coaches and the relationships you have with the organization, really you wouldn't expect it, but they play a factor in how much playing time that you get. And so not only did I have to adjust to being out on my own as a young man, moving away from home, but I also had to quickly learn, the political side of big business from the standpoint of how collegiate sports really works. And so in that process, long story short, my coach that recruited me, he transitioned out of the school. So I found myself in a position where it's like, okay, the one person that I did have as my quote unquote champion here at the university is no longer here. Maybe this is not the right fit for me from the standpoint of school. So I started to, focus on looking at opportunities where schools had a better academic reputation. And so that got me to start looking at Georgetown. And during my sophomore year, I transferred to Georgetown with the idea that I was also going to play football there, but understanding that the focus was going to be more academic than athletic.
Yeah. I love how you say this, because you must have always been, Jason, very smart. You were like, because you look at things strategically, right?
Yeah.
And so you say, I transferred into Georgetown. Now, Georgetown, most people just don't transfer into Georgetown. So academically, your grades were really good.
That's right.
So you had these athletic skills, and by that measure, you were also very smart, right?
That's right. While I was at New Mexico, I tried to maintain a pretty high GPA with the idea that if I can't necessarily excel the way that I've envisioned in my head on the football field, at least I can control what I'm doing in the classroom.
Okay, and what was your GPA back then, approximately, would you say?
I had a 3.8 at New Mexico.
Very good. Okay, so now you transfer into Georgetown. You just apply online, they accept you, you go. And then what was life like at Georgetown?
I loved it. The transition from going from a city like Albuquerque, which is where University of New Mexico is, to Washington, D.C., moving into a metropolitan area, chocolate city. You have the energy of it being the political capital. You also have, a lot of people don't see it as such, but there is a very youthful energy in the city because of how many colleges and universities are in the Washington, D.C. area. So that kind of injected a pulse of youthful energy and excitement that I didn't necessarily have at the previous school. So I went from kind of from the standpoint of being on an island in Albuquerque, as I saw it, to now all of a sudden being completely immersed with all of these like-minded people, with so many different opportunities from the standpoint of social as well as career-wise. After I graduated, it was such an amazing experience in the transition.
Now, here's where the story gets really good. It's your first exposure to Wall Street. Somewhere in there, you realize I'm not going to the NFL, right?
That's right.
Okay.
That's right.
And someone comes in, I can't remember if it was a career transition person. They said, now you're going to go out and get a job in the real world, but let me explain to you what happens on Wall Street.
That's right. That's right. I was interning at the Department of Justice. I had in my mind that I was going to go to law school and go down the path of becoming a sports agent. And I remember one of my classmates, he said, "Hey man, I'm going to this career presentation. You should come with me." And I went to the presentation with him, and he introduced me to one of the recruiters, basically. And I'll never forget, he put these numbers on the screen that showed what a first-year analyst could make right out of undergrad. And I was like, wait 1 second. These numbers are numbers that I've never thought was possible outside of playing professional sports or being an entertainer. And it was amazing to me that out of your first year out of school, that you can make in my situation, you can make more money than your parents ever made.
What was that figure? What were the figures you recall?
I think it was it's like $120,000 your first year.
Right. And this is as a stock market analyst?
This was as basically what they considered a first year analyst. So there's a number of roles that a first year analyst can take coming out of undergrad. You can go into what they call sales and trading, investment banking, or asset management. And for the most part, a first-year analyst in each one of those verticals is going to make about that much money. And that just completely blew my mind.
Because the idea of 100, because a lot of people don't realize how much money you can make working on Wall Street. And as I always talk about in this show, how much money you can make as a trader. So you're looking at $125,000 to start right after college, and you're like, that looks very appealing to me.
That's exactly right. And the being able to achieve that, and I didn't have that much. My parents did well for the standpoint of taking care of me, but we weren't well off by any means. So right. The idea of being able to first off eradicate my student debt, in the first couple of years of working, that was completely amazing to me. And then the idea of really being able to set myself up for the most part, the financial vision that I saw for myself when I thought I was going to be playing professionally, the fact that can still be achieved outside of that was just so exciting. Now,
you would ultimately wind up on deals that were like $50, $100 million deals. But when you first saw that $125,000 salary, did you realize that was the road to millions? Or did you say, hey, the salary looks good? Because I don't think you knew there'd be $100 million deals in your future. But the 125, did you see that multiplying? Is that part of what the appeal was?
Honestly, it was the fact that I had never seen that many zeros.
Okay,
and it was just, call it ignorance. Most of the jobs that I was looking at prior to that were nowhere near that. And so the fact that you can make that as your first year, and then 3, 4, 5 years in, you could possibly be at high six figures to $1 million. I was like, oh my goodness. But to answer your question directly, I didn't see the path to like hundreds of millions of dollars in deals and so forth. It was just like, wow, $120,000, like that was beyond my scope of my initial imagination. So yeah, this sounds like a good path for me to try to start on.
Okay, so because I just want to track where you were in terms of your perception. So now you decide that you're going to walk the Wall Street route. You graduate from Georgetown at the top of your class, right?
That's right.
Parents very proud. And now you are ready to go get a job on Wall Street, right?
Yeah, it was. So kind of taking a step back as it relates to like how it transitions. When I first got to Georgetown, I initially struggled academically because of I didn't do a good job of balancing the amount of social energy that I was all of a sudden immersed into. And I was in a fraternity. And so, just kind of being a young kid in a new environment, I didn't do the best job of balancing that. But I got it together. Right. And then it was like, okay, I'm going to focus. I know what I need to do. And I had someone that spent a lot of time with me, actually two people, that spent a lot of time with me to help me get up to speed in terms of like the language and the process and how to carry yourselves. Shout out to Perry and Derek. They know who they are. Uh-huh. But they really helped me in terms of polishing myself so that I can basically play the game, because Wall Street is a people-oriented business, and it's a good old boy network type thing, and you really need to know how to navigate in order to be successful. So to get even though I had the interest, to actually get in was a pretty arduous process. It wasn't just kind of snap my fingers, here's my resume, look at my grades. It was a pretty difficult process to actually crack into the door.
Yeah, well, you're not kidding, because you interviewed how many times?
So to get my first job, I went on 31 interviews.
31 interviews for a job on Wall Street.
That's right.
Okay. So when you hit number 24, when you're on your 24th interview, do you think maybe this is not for me?
That thought didn't really cross my mind. It was it was thankful to a book that I had read not too long earlier in that time frame. So there's a book by that was written about Reginald Lewis. It's called "Why Should White Guys Have All the Fun?"
I love that book.
And amazing book, amazing story. And my biggest takeaway from that story was perseverance and focus.
Yeah.
Because that's what it took for him to get to where he eventually was, as being like one of the first black billionaires.
Yes, he was the first African American to do a major leverage buyout for Beatrice at the time.
That's right.
Which is legendary. And I don't think anybody's really done anything quite the same. And boy, did he know his number. I mean, just a brilliant guy. Okay, so let's keep the focus back on you. So you didn't realize that one of the reasons that you weren't offered jobs is in effect that lack of polish, right?
Yeah. So I had it was probably maybe in my, it's funny to say, but maybe in my 10th or 12th interview, I asked the guy, he's like, I need to get some feedback, because I keep bumping my head and I'm not exactly sure why I keep getting declined. And he basically told me, you're a smart kid, but you're just not a fit. And I was like, fit? Like, what does that mean, man? Like, I'm not a fit.
Right.
But once again, working with my colleagues, Perry and Derek, they really helped me to understand that, hey, man, you got to look the part, you got to talk the part, and you really have to polish up how you present yourself, what you talk about, how you guide the conversation in the interview, because just being who you already kind of have a notch against you.
Yeah.
And so you have to really remove all of the unknowns from the standpoint of them not really understanding you being who you are, because there's, being a black man, there's just not that many of us on Wall Street. That's just what it is. And so in order to sort of debunk that notion that we can't do the job, you have to really, really play the part. And so you kind of have to put on an acting gig in order to like do well in the interview. So how you sit in the interview, the color of your tie, the color of your shirt, how you greet them upon coming in.
Yep.
All of those things matter. How you laugh at their jokes, how you ask their questions. All of those things matter from the standpoint of getting them to buy in. Because at the end of the day, you're just trying to get them to like you.
And what's so fascinating, see, when I'm trading in an account, there's no politics involved. I love it, right? I just open my account, I make a deposit, and I'm off to the races. For you to get inside of Wall Street, it is a lot more work. Now, let's fast forward, because you ultimately get a job. And what is that position?
So my first job was working as a sales assistant on a trading desk. The firm that I worked for was Merrill Lynch, and I was on their equity derivatives sales team. And I was assisting one of the managing directors from the standpoint of helping him reach out to his clientele and assisting and making sure that trades were booked properly.
Were these institutional trades?
So Merrill Lynch is was, I guess you would say, because now it's Bank of America, but it was a unique institution in that they had a massive distribution force, and that was the Merrill Lynch Financial Advisors. And so the Merrill Lynch Financial Advisors, in effect, they work with the private investors, people on the street, to help them manage their own personal assets. However, in them doing that, they have a suite of products and services that they're offering from the institution, Merrill Lynch. Those guys, their primary focus is relationship management and making sure that the well-being of the account is correct. So they don't necessarily have the time to really get into the weeds of all the products, and a lot of them don't have the the quantitative aptitude to really understand kind of the math behind everything that's going on. So the sales role that I was in was serving as a liaison between the financial advisors, which is essentially our sales force, and the institutional side of the shop, which was basically creating the products.
When you were in charge of trade execution or order flow?
I was in charge of trade execution and order flow. That's correct.
Okay, cool. So when you see the size of these trades, which everybody gets used to, what kinds of trades, what kind of money was being traded on a daily basis?
So you would see ranging from $100,000 upwards to $10-20 million being put into a trade. So a wide range of money, but definitely more money than I had ever seen.
Right. And so $20 million initially is like, wow.
That's right.
3 months into, you're like, another $20 million trade, did that get executed?
That's right.
Yeah, it's amazing how, even as a trader, you get used to large sums of money. Now, this is what's so interesting, and it shows how intelligent you are. You looked over the landscape, you're like, I can't stay here. And why was that?
So being in the bank, you kind of look around and see who's doing what, and then you realize there's a as I saw it, there was a swagger change, depending on where you sat in the bank, and that fundamentally was just based on how much money they were making. And I saw that the guys that were on the investment banking side of the business, that were actually doing the corporate finance type deals with the larger companies, those were the guys that were really, really raking it in.
Long hours, but boy, you can change your life financially.
That's right.
So you decide I've got to get on the M&A side.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right. So what I did was I had I developed a few relationships with some older guys that had been there for a while, and just really just helped them. I relied on them to help me get connected with the right people on that side of the bank. And so with them having been there for a while, they introduced me to their colleagues, and I was able to get a few interviews that ultimately helped me land an opportunity on the investment banking side.
Okay.
So my first role on the investment banking side, I was in charge of, or not in charge of, but I was in the capital raising group, which basically means that you have these private institutions that raise capital so that they can manage the capital on behalf of institutional investors. And that's inclusive of hedge funds, private equity funds, venture capital funds. So these are really, really smart guys that are money managers. However, they don't necessarily have the institutional relationships that are required to, raise $100 million, $1 billion funds. And so what we would do is work on behalf of these investment funds and talk to the pension investors, the endowment investors, to help them raise the capital so that they can close their funds. So that was actually my first role within the investment banking side.
So let me make sure I understand. So you were helping raise capital for a new fund.
That's correct.
Did you know anything about the fund's objective? You knew how much you needed. There was a target to raise these capital so that money could make its way to Wall Street and be traded. Mm-hmm. But did you know anything about, you knew who the fund manager was.
That's right. Yeah, we had to get it, before we actually took on an engagement, we had to get extremely close to what the fund was doing, the fund manager. So we had to go through our own due diligence process before we started to shop the fund around to our institutional investors. So that literally from ideation on down to the actual fund formation, we were intimately involved in that entire process. So before we even opened up the door to our institutional investors, we had done all the legal documents, done all of the investment due diligence, looking at their background, their history, to prove so that we could prove that they were a viable investment manager, because essentially we were putting our necks on the line by vouching for these investment funds.
Absolutely. And when you think back at your time there, what was one of the largest amounts of capital you saw raised when your team had to go find the money, basically.
I think the biggest fund that I actively worked on was I think it was like 1.2 billion.
1.2 billion.
Yeah.
Okay. And does your team get a commission for raising that money and having the deal go through?
6%.
There you go, 6%. And that is spread across the team.
Across the organization, that's right.
Okay, now let me ask you this because I'm more of a trader, right?
Okay.
I've never been in mergers and acquisitions. You know, I look at open interest on covered calls, right? Which it always trips me out when I talk to Jason because I can just pick a term and be like, no, I know what you mean. And so I'm looking on every trade just as an indication of like, hey, what's the flow of capital when I sell a covered call? Now, obviously, if you're in a Dow component, you have high amounts of liquidity, blah, 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 blah. But I'm looking to see how much money is flowing into that stock. Okay. And when I learned that there are hedge funds, when they need money, they go to a fund of fund, Jason, because they rather take the $200 million from the guy from, whatever country is like, rather than try to raise the $200 million from individuals, they'll go to that guy. He becomes sort of kind of like their boss, and he wants his cut of what the hedge fund makes. When you saw the layers of capital that was out there in that community, did that blow your mind? Because it certainly blew mine initially.
Yeah, absolutely. It was insane to me that you can say, okay, we're going to work on this transaction, but in order for us to work on this transaction, as they say, we're going to take 50 basis points, which basically means 0.5%. So we're going to take 0.5%. So that half
of capital raise,
okay. Right? And I'm just giving you a hypothetical transaction, but we'll take 0.5% of that transaction.
Right.
But the fact that the 0.5% of that transaction could equal $10 million. It was just it was insane to me. So that gives you kind of an idea of how much money was actually flowing through.
Yeah.
Because if 0.5% can equal $10 million,
oh yeah.
I mean, like the amount of money that is flowing through, it's trillions and trillions of dollars.
Yeah.
That's flowing through the capital markets.
Right. And so you become very accustomed to large amounts of money, I would imagine, right?
That's right.
And you were in a pipeline business, which meant that you could be working on 4 deals at once?
That's right.
Or did you have to close a deal, take your commission?
No, we would be working on 3 to 4 funds at a time. So it was a very, very fast-paced environment because sometimes, clients would want the same thing in the same time frame. So because of that, I found myself working consistently, 16, 20-hour days.
Absolutely. Now, let me ask you this before we go to commercial. So let's go back to my hedge fund. Hey, I need $200 million. Let me take the money from the guy. He's going to say, here's my cut for participant. First of all, he's going to say, what's your strategy and all that. And then he's going to put in his $200 million. The $200 million that my fund-to-fund guy could be margin on an $800 million account.
Oh, that's right.
In other words, he's writing a check out of his line of credit to fund my fund, and his team has a way to hedge it off and tax purposes and all of that. Again, the layers of capital that are out there for some people to get their hands on was astounding to me. When you're dealing with large sums of money like that, you can't go. How do you go back to your family and go, yeah, I'm working on $100 million deal? Some people would say you're not in the real world, although you really are in the real world. Who are your friends? Who do you talk to at that level?
Yeah, so we, you because of how much time you're spending at work, your colleagues become your friends. You're there 24/7, and so I can honestly say that was probably one of the downsides to being in the industry, is that I did lose a little bit of touch with my friends. I'm from Southern California. I was in New York. I wasn't able to travel that much because for the most part the job owned me, and so I'm not keeping tabs with what's going on. That's a very transformative time of life in your 20s, and people are having kids, traveling, getting married, and I missed a lot of that stuff because of how involved I was in my job. The other side to that is I served as a benchmark to a lot of my younger family members. So that was the positive side of it. And, my cousins and those that were coming up under me, I served as a beacon of light where they're like, yo, I could do that too, because look what Jay's doing.
Yes.
So that was the one of the things that kind of kept me going, even though I didn't necessarily have that I was kind of losing a little bit of that connection with my family because of how much I was working. And
that's one of the realities of when you're living in the world of wealth. And when I'm teaching people all the time, I'm like, listen, I had somebody coming to me about 2 years ago, and they came into class and said, "What's wrong?" He said, "I only made $35,000 this month trading." I was like, only? Are you kidding me? Because I always have to remind people that if you're in the Wealthy Investor Program, you're doing really, really well. But it is easy to lose touch with money and your expectations, right?
That's right.
All right. When we come back after this commercial break, you're going to talk about being promoted to vice president and some of the people that you have to deal with. Hey, listen, this is VIP Secrets from Mr. Jason Malone. More with Jason Malone right after this break.
You're listening to the Trading Stocks Made Easy podcast. Want to learn more about how to trade and invest in the stock market? Visit thewealthyinvestor.net/products. That's thewealthyinvestor.net/products and order the Wealthy Investor's Guide to Stock Market Success audio series. This easy to follow 5 CD audio series and manual will teach you the basics of how to buy and sell stocks, how to collect quarterly dividends for life, plus hidden income generating strategies like covered call writing and volatility trading. Start creating financial freedom right now. Get the financial education you need to get ahead. Visit thewealthyinvestor.net/products.
And welcome back to Trading Stocks Made Easy. I am in the studio with Jason Malone. Okay, let's pick up now. So your perception changes. We were talking about before the break, like your perception of reality changes. And, sometimes, Jason, I feel like self-made wealthy people get a bad rap, right? I was at a party with someone and they said, well, you've obviously done very well for yourself. How does it feel like to make it? And there are some days, even though I have this glamorous life, I feel like I'm trying not to go back, right?
That's right.
Because it's not just about making a lot of money. Then you have to manage it, and there's taxes and there's corporate structures and all that jazz. Just to go back, you felt like you were aware of the fact that you were losing touch with like the common folk socioeconomically, but you were also meeting extraordinarily wealthy people.
That's right.
Now, here's where we won't give any names, but some of the deals that you were doing involved some of the wealthiest people in the United States and wealthiest families in the world, right?
That's right.
And what were they doing?
Yeah, so I'd say one of the most interesting ones was we helped raise the second fund for a guy that was on the right side of the CLO and CDO crash.
Okay.
So he saw what was going on in the run up from 05 to 08, and he basically was short the credit market. And as we all know from the financial crisis, things went the opposite way, and he benefited significantly from that. And so when that happened, he was viewed, with extremely high esteem. And I had the benefit of raising his second fund. And I got to be honest, I've never seen money move that fast.
You mean when the market crashed and his account flourished?
That's right.
Yeah, that's extraordinary.
And also when he opened it up for his second fund, because then everybody was like, oh, you're the Oracle.
Oh, right. Okay. Now, there were also some very famous families who were acquiring, because you were not only raising capital, you were also marrying companies together, right? Right. So there were some very famous families, because a lot of this wealth was also family wealth. It wasn't just individual generations, and they were participating in the market or buying other companies, right?
That's right.
And that's where you learned about things. Well, I shouldn't say you learned, but you employed evaluation strategies. Yeah.
So it was in the investment side of thing. You're kind of sitting on the other side of the table from the principal, and then a lot of times the principal is someone that you made a lot of wealth doing something else, whether they're in the energy business or they sell hot sauce. Like I saw the scope of different types of businesses that were out there, And that was, the more and more I did that, the more I was intrigued with the operational side of finance, as opposed to just moving money in the capital markets. And that kind of triggered my interest in looking more at the mergers and acquisition side of it, because essentially that's where value is transferred. You're buying a company, you're selling a company. That is how wealth is transferred for the most part in the U.S. with that structure, that ability. Mm-hmm. And in 2008 / 2009, the infamous financial crisis and the crash, I just so happened to be at one of the banks that imploded from the inside. And I was able to kind of navigate with other people from the acquiring company, i.e. B of A. Mm-hmm. And I was able to transition into the acquisition side of the team, mm-hmm. That focused on the assimilation of the Merrill Lynch business into the Bank of America business. Mm-hmm. And that's when I got intimately involved in how an acquisition works on the operational side. And I worked on that project for about a year and a half, and I was like, yeah, this is where it's at. Like, working on this side of it, because you're able to really see kind of the inner workings of a company, how things are put together, and how value is created. Yes. And I was like, yep, I want to continue to work in this side of the business.
Okay. And you enjoyed it mainly and for the most part for a little while. Mm-hmm. Because now you're a vice president.
That's right.
Right. You've done something that is absolutely extraordinary. I don't want to tell all of your business here, but you're living an incredible lifestyle.
Appreciate you.
Right. Something to do with a penthouse. I'll just leave it at that.
I got you.
And then something inside you, because this happens, says, this is not really where I want to be, mm-hmm, right? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Can you explain that?
Yeah, there was a level of emptiness that started to get louder. I grew up very, very strong faith in God, and I was finding myself starting to actually fall in love with the process of making money. And that's a very tricky path to start to continue down. Mm-hmm. And I was paying attention to kind of the emptiness that was inside of me in that process. Not vilifying making money by any means, mm-hmm. But more so just falling in love with the process of just making money and talking about money all the time. And you wake up and you're looking at money and you spend 18 hours thinking about money. It can get pretty infectious. And so I wanted to get to a point where I was able to start to create tangible value, mm-hmm. And really kind of get back to being someone that is actually making a difference in lives, as yes. opposed to making the rich richer. And there's nothing wrong with that by any means, but it was more so kind of a personal fulfillment thing that I was just like, I've climbed this ladder. And everything that I wanted, I have, but I still have this emptiness, and so there's something that I need to do about that.
And I'm so happy that you addressed that, because when I started trading on my own, I mean, I never knew that I would ultimately become the wealthy investor. I was amazed, and I got to a certain point where I realized, you could make millions and millions of dollars, whether the market is bullish, bearish, or neutral, right? And in layman's terms, whether it goes up, goes down, or stays the same. And because of the nature of my personality, I want to tell everybody, right? And I realized at one point I could either start a fund, but then I would be making rich people richer. And that is not a lot of fun. For me, the way to change the world was to, for lack of a better term, spread the gospel of financial freedom. Mm-hmm. Like, if more people understood what Wall Street was all about, they would change their lives. And covered calls was the first trade that I really thought. So I share something similar with you in the sense that just making a lot of money in and of itself, not enough. But if you have the opportunity to change someone's life, that was amazing to me, right? Because they listened to your podcast or whatever it was. So we kind of discovered the same thing. And that's the one thing I think about that's really interesting in my financial journey. It's not enough for me to just have all these great, shiny things and a great life. Who did I help today? And that's really important. You still feel that?
I do.
Yeah.
I do. If I'm not moving the needle in other people's situation and or lives, then what am I really accomplishing? And so that's at the core of kind of everything that I do now. It's really focusing on helping other people achieve based off of the information that I have. And I had a mentor tell me that if you focus on helping others achieve their dreams, you'll in effect achieve yours in the process. And so I firmly believe that now, because I see how just the information and the know-how that I developed in that period of time that I was doing what I was doing. I see just how much more it's helping other people, and then that's so much more fulfilling.
Right. Now, you left Wall Street and started a few businesses. Now, we'll have to have you come back, and we'll talk about your life post-Wall Street. But seeing hundreds of millions of dollars and having exposure to businesses that are billion-dollar businesses, how do you think that has changed you? And I'll tell you why. Because I talk to a lot of people about changing their money beliefs, because most people don't understand how much tremendous money there really is that they can earn on their own if they get the right financial education. But in your case, just the exposure to hundreds of millions and billions of dollars, how would you say that has changed you personally?
Yeah, so in terms of just my overall perspective on money, like I kind of view money more so as a tool as opposed to a possession, a tool that you can leverage to really accomplish a whole lot of things. Money is a tricky spirit, right? It doesn't really exist. It's just a means of exchange that has been assigned value based on a perspective. And so when you really understand that, and then it makes it easy to be like, yeah, trillions of dollars are moving around, because people are the biggest assets. And if we have to figure out a means of exchange, and where we are right now, money is that primary means of exchange. So the idea that trillions of dollars is moving around is, yeah, that's what's supposed to happen,
right?
And so it really is a mindset. It's a function of belief and know-how, and I truly believe that wealth is created, or value is created in two ways. It's access to capital and access to deals and information. And so when you have those two going together, then you just have a frictionless environment, and so much value and wealth is created in that process. The hard part, though, is it truly is a mindset thing, because you have to get to a point where people are willing to trust you with that access to capital. And then you also have to get to a point where people are willing to share their access to information and access to deals. And so once that friction is sort of removed, then you have this beautiful flow of capital. And the best institution of that I've seen so far is Wall Street, because it's this institution that's been created where that access to capital and access to deals is there. Hence, you have trillions of dollars moving around every single day.
What are your thoughts on the fact that every single person listening to this show, whether they open an E-Trade account, a TD Ameritrade account, has instant access to the capital markets? Now, that doesn't mean that they're going to go raise $100 million, but they can participate. To me, that is mind-blowing. To you, does that seem extraordinary or ordinary?
I think that's extraordinary that people have the ability. It's kind of like the same thing as with the invent of the internet. Now, all of a sudden, people have unlimited access to information for the most part through the amount of services that have been provided to give people access to the markets. Like that kind of access to capital nowadays is more fluid than it ever has been. But once again, as you spoke to earlier, it comes down to the mindset and the belief and know-how, because you can start with a little and make a whole lot, but you got to know how to do it.
Yes, absolutely. Jason, first of all, I'm so grateful that you were here today. And we could have gotten in a lot more depth, but I felt we would lose the audience. Like, you showed me certain evaluation formulas and all of that. But I want people to know that you have been there. You have truly been on the inside. You've seen extraordinary things happen that became very ordinary, but you never lost your soul.
That's right.
So that's the part of the story that I want everybody to remember. And I thank you so much for coming in and sharing your time today.
I appreciate you for having me.
You got it. My thanks once again to Jason Malone for coming in and sharing his experience. We tried to keep it pretty simple, but here's what I want you to feel good about and to be excited about. If there are trillions of dollars on Wall Street, there's gotta be hundreds of thousands of dollars with your name on it. All that is missing is the open mind and the financial education on how to make that your reality. And that's what Trading Stocks Made Easy in the Wealthy Investor Program is all about. This is Tyrone Jackson, the Wealthy Investor, saying, keep that open mind. You have a lot to look forward to. Stay open, stay positive, and I'll see you next time.
Want to increase your stock market trading profits? Then you need to start your monthly membership to WITradeschool.com right now. Don't know which stocks to choose for trading in today's market? No problem. Just follow Tyrone Jackson's hot stock picks inside WITradeschool.com. At WITradeschool.com, you can also follow Tyrone's weekly stock market tutorials and investing advice. Plus, each week you can submit your trading and investing questions directly to our staff, and Tyrone will answer them as part of our weekly video Q&A sessions. Begin your membership right now and you'll get instant access to WITradeschool.com's video library. That means you'll get to know all of Tyrone's major and minor trading strategies, including covered call writing and volatility trading for fast, sexy profits. Tyrone Jackson, the Wealthy Investor, has helped his students earn thousands of dollars per month trading stocks online from home. These are people just like you. In addition to his successful podcast, Tyrone's editorial content has been featured on CBSMoneyWatch.com, NASDAQ.com, and YahooFinance.com. So what are you waiting for? Follow Tyrone Jackson's red-hot stock trades and investment strategies today. Don't wait. Start your monthly membership at WITradeschool.com right now.
You've been listening to the Trading Stocks Made Easy podcast. Be sure to rate and review our show on iTunes. While you're on iTunes, be sure to click the subscribe button and you'll automatically receive our next episode.